Welcome to SFAL League Charter discussion. We're going to cover the league charter, some of the deeper details that you may not have been focusing on that are still important that I want to make sure you see before we get going here. So we're not going to cover sort of contracts or the auction. We'll have a separate broadcast for that and make sure everybody understands how that works. This is going to cover some of the more deeper details. We're going to start with franchise roles. Okay. Every franchise must include a franchisee plus two additional officers, a coach and a general manager. So there's franchisee, coach, and there's general manager. Those are the three roles. Franchisee is the person responsible for league dues and other financial matters. They're essentially the owner of the franchise. Then typically that franchisee is also going to be the coach and the GM. You're going to cover all those spots. But not everybody does it that way. We have two franchises so far that have a different role. So we have Greg in Pittsburgh, who is our franchisee and our GM. But Brian is the coach. So he'll be coaching the game. So this is important for you because if you need to schedule a game with Pittsburgh, you should be emailing primarily Brian. That's who you're really looking for. You may go ahead and CC Greg if you want to. Feel free. But Brian is the person responsible for scheduling the games. It doesn't mean that Greg won't coach one. Greg could coach one, but if he does need to let you know ahead of time. And as much time ahead as possible, please. So you know who you're facing. Next. Expectations for membership. First of all, anybody who's a franchisee, anybody who's a GM, anybody who's a coach, we just use the word member if they're a member. So requirements of being a member. Well, there's a bunch here, but I want to focus on one. You need to be somewhat technology savvy, okay? Not a advanced user by any stretch, but you need to handle being on a Zoom call or a team call without having somebody helping you, or participating in an eBay auction or buying something on Amazon. If you can do those things, you'll be just fine. If you can't do those things, then it's probably not a very good fit for you. That's all. I want to jump ahead to franchise status. Okay, so we have a tenured status, a legacy status, an interim status, and a rookie status. A rookie status is a first-year franchisee, GM or coach. Basically, the franchise itself would be considered a rookie, and they are not able to trade in their first year. That will not apply to any of us in this first year of SFAL. It will apply to anybody who comes in new next year. They can't trade for their first year. The reason is that our trading has additional layers of strategy related to salary on top of it, and we don't want somebody coming in new and sort of upsetting balance in the league. We just don't want to deal with that. They could sit back, watch, come back and trade the second year. League fees, we say it's going to be $8, turned out to be $6 this year. It could be even less. It should be less going forward. Don't have the final dollars on the auction this year, but I'm guessing or hoping it goes to $5 or $4 next year. Member conduct. Let's talk a bit about scheduling games. Let's jump down to 3.2 here. So you have 4 quarter games, 4 games each quarter. When you schedule a game with an opponent, at that point, this is different than many draft leagues you're in. At the point of scheduling, you need to send out to the league in Slack when your game is going to be. Why? Because we encourage people watching games, and we certainly encourage broadcasting of games. And the more lead time people have, the more opportunity they'll have to broadcast or watch those games. That's very important in SFAL. Okay. If over time there's a pattern of not scheduling games ahead of time, which has the appearance of trying to avoid being watched or broadcast, then you're probably not a good fit for SFAL. In short, if you don't like your games broadcast, then SFAL probably isn't for you. Hopefully that's not a problem for anybody. However, you need not go out of your way to schedule every game at Thursday at a 7 p.m. Eastern time slot because that's when people are going to watch. No. Between you and your opponent, you can schedule it on Christmas Eve at 3 a.m. if you want to. Have a ball. But you do need to let us know that you've done that ahead of time as far as you can. The only time we'll step in and try to coordinate scheduling with the two coaches is during the playoffs. Broadcasts, previews, and review shows, we believe they enliven the competition and vastly enrich the entire experience. So all forms of these types of things are encouraged in SFAL. Next, games that are out of hand. Games are out of hand, you need to ask your opponent for mercy. If you feel that you have been beaten down enough, you're on defense, you want to ask for mercy, ask for it. The coach can say yes, or the coach can say no. If the coach says no, then it just need to tell you why. Hey, it's only the second quarter. If it's still this score in the fourth, I'll gladly accept mercy then. Okay. And then if they accept it, then you're in mercy. What does that mean? One team, the offense, can only call runs or flat look-ins. The defense can only call run or pass and not move their defensive players to keep things moving along. And that's it. Very vanilla game from that point forward. No keying, no double teaming, no nothing on defense, and no short and long passes on offense during mercy. Okay. If somehow the score closes and anybody wants to get out of mercy, you can ask to get out of mercy. And you can go back in if you want to. Whatever. The point is this. If the game is not being played under the mercy rule, then it's expected that both players will be playing per normal with no unwritten rules of sportsmanship in effect. There's no such thing as my interpretation of sportsmanship versus your interpretation. Yes, for mercy. And you go into it, and that's it. That's how we handle it. It doesn't eliminate the number of claims that an opponent was running up the score, okay, or eliminate those problems related to that, but it mitigates a lot of it. Simple enough. Once you read that once, you'll get it down. Very easy. That's how we play it. Let's talk about the season calendar. So this league year, we're starting right here, right? This is the only year that we're going to start at the auction itself. That's really when everything begins for us. After the auction, and only after the auction, we can start trading. We do not start trading in the middle. We do not start trading in the middle of the auction. No trading allowed in the auction. It would be a mess. Instead, I'll announce auction's over now. We can start trading. When you start trading in that first trading period after the auction, at that point, you can exceed the cap. The only time the cap is actually enforced is at the auction itself. Obviously, the roster you submit the auction deadline, who your keepers, needs to be less than 650. But the actual enforcement of the auction, the only time is during the auction. Because that's when player acquisition, the vast, vast majority of it, happens. After that, you can go over during your trades. You can go over us anytime. Important to know that. So we can start trading after the auction. Then fall into some traditional draft league procedures like the roster deadline. A supplemental draft will occur. And then we'll end trading and we'll have final roster cutdowns and begin the season. Once that free trading ends, the season begins, another different trading period starts. That's the in-season trading. We're going to talk about that more in a second. Very restricted trading, but it exists in season. It'll end, that in-season trading likely at the end of the second quarter. We'll announce it. In the fourth quarter, any teams that are eliminated from the playoffs can start trading for next year, right then and there. Be in effect till the new league year, but you can start trading there and have those discussions if you want to. 1 week following the Super Bowl, the championship, is the deadline for trading, that period for trading, and we end the league year there, and we start the new league year, back up to number 1 now. A couple weeks later, hopefully in March, we update the rosters. They get their new contract status because they all sort of matriculate, and the cold stove trading period begins. So you can have the spring and summer trading period that lasts all the way, free trading all the way until the auction roster deadline 2 weeks prior to the auction is when that occurs. And then a day later, you get your roster deadline in, which is when you declare which players you're keeping and which ones you're not. Moving on. Trading. Covered some of it. 2 more details. First thing to remember, a player carries their current full salary and contract status to the new franchise. Okay? That's it. And that's all that can be traded is the player and his related status and salary. Nothing else can be traded. No auction money, no auction points, dollars, whatever, no supplemental draft picks, no nothing. The only thing that can be traded is the players. No future considerations. Trading period 3. Let's talk more about that in-season trading. In-season trading is designed to have a buyer and a seller come together and slightly modify, improve the buying team and slightly look more to the future for the selling team. Okay. We want to give an opportunity for teams that are trying to rebuild as much opportunity as they can. So we have good turnover in the standings year after year. At the same time, it's a lot of fun for a team that's buying to try to improve their team in year and improve their playoff chances. We try to balance that a bit. We take a couple different extra policies inside period 3 to account for that balance. First thing, there's no three-way deals. Okay. Only two teams can trade with each other. Also, and most importantly, you only get one period 3 trade per league year. So use it wisely. Additionally, no players with a running card or passing card can be traded in period 3. Very important. You're not going to overhaul your team entirely in period 3. You have to maintain all roster mins and maxes. And importantly, an asterisk player must be involved in the deal and go from one side to the other only. What does that mean? Let's just walk through it. Any Z status player, which means a player who's going to be available in the next auction, or any player whose salary exceeds 25, they are defined as an asterisk player. An asterisk player must be involved in every in-season trade, and the asterisk player must move from one side to the other. So this Z status player means this is their last year of their contract. They're going to be auctioned next year. You can't keep them again. They are what you would call a rental player. So either a rental or a high salary guy needs to move from the selling team to the buying team. And the buying team is going to send back somebody who's not a Z status player or not above $25, probably somebody who's a good keeper. That's how period 3 trading is designed. The goalposts around them are shaped. Period 3 trades do not go into effect until the start of the following quarter. Move to defensive declarations. You get your usual defensive declaration at the roster deadline. Before the season starts, you tell us if you want to be 3-4 or 4-3 and you figure out your rating. But you get another bite of the apple at the end of each quarter. Optionally, you can change your formation if you decide for the next quarter before the preceding quarter ends. So you get toward the end of the first quarter, you just made a trade for a new cornerback. You decide, hey, I'm going to move, or safety, I'm going to move from a 3-4 to a 4-3 as a result because I get a better rating, or maybe the defense isn't working out for you and you want to try something else. Whatever the case may be, you can make that change quarter to quarter, and you can also make that change before the start of the playoffs. Defensive cards. We obviously use the draft cards. We quote unquote double count. A couple things to note. Number one, we use the strong safeties run rating. Okay. Note that. Make sure you read that, understand it. Therefore, the run thresholds are different than the pass thresholds. Read that, understand it. Last thing, we don't use excellent. We go as far as good. We'll go back and forth on this, but the bottom line is without having excellent, it brings more balance to the league. You might say, and it's a valid counter argument, well, with 24 teams, if you could have an excellent defense, that can give a team with a bad quarterback a chance to contend. That's true, but it's offset by the fact that if you have a team that has a decent offense and excellent, they may just dominate the league. Somebody can just run away from it. And a couple teams that have that would just run away. So when it's all said and done, you wrap it up. More balance is brought to the league by eliminating excellent. And that's how we'll play it. League rules: running back fatigue is on. Home field advantage. If the game lets us, home field advantage will be turned off in the regular season, but turned on for the playoffs. We use individualized fumble ratings, so know that your defensive cards are not going to help you get more fumbles depending on your rating. It's all going to go to the halfback or the ball carrier. Just change this. We're not going to allow runs or receptions beyond what they did in real life. This is just to maintain good value among the good wide receivers. If not, everybody gets a little bit too bunched together and wide receiver values actually go down as a result. We don't want that. Exhausted running backs will get injured. Yeah, because we have running back fatigue on. Remember, they can only get injured for one game, not multi-game injuries anymore. We'll explain that soon. Dump-off rule is on. 6-rated linebackers in the flats matter. Looser substitutions are allowed, so a right cornerback can play left cornerback. There's a whole section on that you can read. Yak is turned on. Keep that in mind. And again, injuries are single game, and we'll come back to that. No play animation. Way too many slow games out there, guys. By rule, no play animation. I'm thinking, it says here, unless mutually agreed by both coaches prior to kickoff, I think we need to add a column in the members and say whether you like animation or not. That way you know ahead of time. You don't even need to ask. Your opponents know. Don't even ask. Don't put them in position of having to tell you no, that awkward position. Also, do not animate dice on cards. Playoffs run just like Frozen Tundra, except the best seed shall be deemed a home team if the game lets us do that. Rosters, couple things here. QBs, if they have fewer than 100 pass attempts, they're considered a QB2. That matters because in the auction, those that are regular QBs and not QB2s, you're only allowed to have 2 of them during the auction. 2. Also a roster max for later. Kickers limited to 1. QB2s, people with under 100 attempts, you can have as many as you want. So that you can fit into your roster. Okay, house rules. You can blitz any down. You can run 3-4. You can run 4-3. Do whatever you want on defense. Go ahead and get creative. Play a quarterback who's a QB2 under 100. Not likely going to happen very often. You see the restrictions here, like many leagues. Those are the fewer than 100 passes have a hard time getting into a game. Injuries, they're turned on. We wanted multi-game injuries, but we looked at it different ways. We had some members give us ideas of how we could make it work. Bottom line is, if we wanted to go to multi-game injuries, we could not have a quarterly schedule. We would need to play week to week. I was happy to go week to week. Got feedback that it probably wasn't the best idea. So, okay, fine. We'll keep it at single game injury. Why did I want multi-game injury? The reason is because what happens in a league like this, especially, but also happens in draft leagues too, guys, but especially in a league like this, is that a smart franchise will focus on putting money into their starting 22 roughly, and then the rest of their team becomes a farm system. It becomes their farm team. So you have the major league team, you have the minor league team, and you have all these backups for no reason because you're not really ever going to play them in a single game injury scenario or no injury scenario. That's not fun. Not good. You get too many super teams very soon, very quickly. There's a bunch of super teams and a bunch of people who don't have anybody, and it's not a fun league to play. So that's why multiple game injuries are really, really important. But we wanted to play quarterly. So the compromise was to bring the roster size down. We were going to auction up to 55 people. Now we're going to have a max roster when it's all said and done of 46. So what that does is it forces owners to have to be very careful about how much they jump to one end of the continuum or the other in terms of trying to use their backups to be their farm system. If they do, they won't have depth when they hit a single game injury, and they might end up losing some games because they didn't plan their depth correctly. By losing those 7, what would be 7 roster spots, it actually makes a pretty big deal. Makes a big difference. Moving on. That's it. All right. If you have any questions about this, any of these rules, and it's controversial, just DM me, please. If it's controversial, don't put it out for everybody. So we have, 20 different opinions about a controversial subject. It can get out of hand quickly. Happy to take in opinions. Don't get me wrong, but if it's controversial, let's talk about it first before we bring it to everybody else. If it's not controversial, just feel free to post in general, and we'll be happy to talk about it. Hope this was helpful. You'll see more broadcasts shortly.